We needed this actor needed to perform, and it was quite a extensive sort of amount of time on the set. Yeah, so very unusual for Evil Dead. It was just a very different beast for an Evil Dead project.
I heard that even Sweet Tooth's ears were puppeteered.
Correct. Again, it was a very heavily practical project, that one. I don't think we did much visual effects. You know, there was the nose, there was the ears, there was the mouth, there was the tail, you know, the studio, Marvel, the secrecy, steroids, really. That film is just like nothing like you've ever seen before.
How's it going, Jane? How's everything?
Good. Good. I'm good. I'm not long back from work. It's always good to talk film, and lots of projects under my belt that I'm sure you've seen. I'm trying to not mix up Evil Deads because I've just finished shooting Wrath.
With all the prosthetics and makeup and gore that goes into bringing a movie like that into life, could you take me through designing those elements for Evil Dead Burn versus the other Evil Dead projects that you worked on?
Yeah, sure. Well, probably the biggest difference was, I mean, our initial approach, as always, is especially with Evil Dead, is to really go for a fully practical build. But the lead character, Will, as you saw, was ended up being quite an integrated visual effects build because the director, Sebastian, just kept wanting the skeletal kind of vision, and we went down all sorts of different routes of, you know, looking for a cast member that was skinny enough and skeletal enough, like they did in 28 years later. But we needed this actor needed to perform, and it was quite a extensive sort of amount of time on the set. So someone of that sort of physique hasn't actually got the energy to do a whole movie. It's okay for a short glimpse. So we ended up, and the director also really wanted the actor George to play that role, alive and dead, so to speak. So we ended up looking at a sort of many variations, to be fair, of that design of that character. And it kept wanting it thinner and thinner and more holes and more burnt parts. And so obviously we can't do negative space in prosthetics. So we ended up integrating quite a lot of visual effects. And so that was quite a new thing and quite a sort of unknown territory for Evil Dead. So I was a little nervous that it might not go down well with the fans, but hopefully it's proven to be successful.
It was definitely successful in the ways that it made me look away from the screen and the ways that I couldn't look away from the screen because of what was happening.
Oh, great. Well, we managed to keep, I mean, most of the facial, you know, obviously that was a full face prosthetics. It was still a 4-hour makeup to put him in through the prosthetics. But yeah, most of it was practical around his face. Obviously, the negative space on the back of the head. We had some green parts to the makeup on his head. But essentially, the only other part of him that was practical was his hand, and the rest was visual effects. So he was in a motion capture suit.
Oh, wow.
That character. Yeah, so very unusual for Evil Dead, as you can imagine. Done it before in other films, but it was just a very different beast for an Evil Dead project.
I hear that the use of fire was also a big play into the Evil Dead Burn production.
That's very true. Yeah, that's very true. And again, that was another thing. We, again, tried to do a lot of that practically. But essentially, obviously, you can't do as much fire as was needed in a practical sense, especially in a studio. So there was quite a lot of fire elements. So again, adding a different tune, a different path to the Evil Dead that we know and love. The franchise doesn't usually use as much visual effects as this one did. But I think it was pretty seamless, and well, it was a new adventure, and it's quite cool to do something different.
You talk about how you find that your strengths are in character makeup and character design and character development. What are some of your favorite characters that you've designed throughout your career?
Oof, throughout my career, which I realized the other day is now 40 years long. So there's a lot to
Congratulations.
think about, a lot to think about. Um, yeah, I do love character development. I must say, design and the character development is the favorite part of my job. I've done well, let me think. Various. I mean, really just changing and developing a character that's very different from the performer is quite enjoyable, and really exploring that design with the performer as well as the director, obviously. But it's really quite a joy to sort of involve the actor themselves, the performer themselves, into some characters. And or if I can think of examples, I did a show called Sweet Tooth. You know the TV show Sweet Tooth.
Yeah.
And it was quite interesting because that was quite challenging for me. I was the hybrid creative designer. So I designed not just the makeup prosthetics, but also the elements, the animatronics and the costume prop elements and so forth. So, and that was all mostly on children. So that was really cool, a real challenge that I really enjoyed. We were integrating mostly wearable items because of them being children. We couldn't have a lot of time with them in the chair, so it was integrating prosthetics to look like it was their body parts into wearable items. So we had birds with wings. We had all sorts of. We had porcupines with spines coming out their back, and all sorts of characters that we integrated animatronics into, and RC, and also practically puppeteered elements. So yeah, so that was really fun.
I heard that even Sweet Tooth's ears were puppeteered, that they
That's
were
correct.
practical and the motion was
Yeah.
practical.
Yeah, that's correct. Again, it was a very heavily practical project. That one, I don't think we did much visual effects. I mean, we had some babies that we weren't able to do prosthetics onto at all, so there was a bit of visual effects involved there. But otherwise, a lot of it was practical effects. We had kids in like a wolf, the wolf boys, that they had like fully animatronic muzzles and ears and tails. So to actually service the batteries for all of those items, where we had like 4 puppeteers on one kid for the wolves, and there was the nose, there was the ears, there was the mouth, there was the tail. So there was quite a lot of elements, and we had to hide the battery pack. So I had to come up with a design of clothing effectively that would allow us, which I ended up doing like a sort of a army dog harness, and that allowed us to integrate battery packs and things like that. So yeah, just having to think around those sorts of troubleshoot those kind of problems is something I enjoy.
Yeah, I think that's something very interesting. What do you think that the audience doesn't understand about hair and makeup and prosthetics and practical effects like that?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I often think that the audience doesn't necessarily realize the work that's gone into some of the elements, particularly like wigs. Like I do a lot of wig work, and I don't know whether people even realize they're wigs, which is obviously to our credit if they don't. But it's also you lose a little bit of acknowledgement of that a little bit, because people don't realize that, oh, really, that was a wig.
Yeah.
Don't realize the work that's gone into it. So yeah, it is interesting. I mean, you don't want the audience to be aware of the wigs or the prosthetics, and so if they're not, I think that's a big tick. But yeah, it does always. It's quite a joy actually when you do talk to people and they realize that it wasn't real, or that it wasn't theirs, or it wasn't their nose, or it wasn't their hair. And it's kind of cool when that conversation evolves. So but yeah, the secret's probably the better thing in all of that.
Right, because you worked on projects from Hercules to The Wrecking Crew. I'm curious,
Wide variety.
what's it like working with Lee Winnell on Wolfman versus working with James Gunn on Guardians of the Galaxy? So from like a horror film to a space epic.
Yeah, extreme difference, huh? I mean, there's the James Gunn. I mean, the Guardians of the Galaxy. It's really just the size of the project. You know, the studio, Marvel, the secrecy, this, you know, the high security, the, you know, not being able to read the scripts. There's all that sort of that comes along with it. Whereas, you know, hardly any time with the director. Whereas working on something like Wolfman, that's a little bit more independent with Blumhouse, it's very much a more of a contained, friendly sort of network of filmmakers that integrate probably a little closer. Um, yeah, I think you feel a little bit more included, perhaps on an independent film, and I quite enjoy all the beginning of the filmmaking. To me, is part of the magic. So um, once we get on set, obviously it's also a different beast. But I really enjoy the integration with production designer, with the director, the costume designer, and really actually just pulling the project together as a group and as a team, which I think you definitely get to do that more on an independent, smaller project.
What were some of the challenges working on Wolfman? Because throughout the plot of the film, the main character is continuously evolving and his design is continuously changing.
Mm. Yeah, well, that was actually a lovely character to do. The actor Chris was great to work with, and there was a lot of subtle changes that we wanted, that were really just really subtle and really simple, and but very effective. There were certain products that I found that helped give that sort of clammy feeling to the skin. There was quite a lot that we did with makeup before we then started integrating prosthetics, which was Arian's work. Arian's great work, and actually working alongside him was awesome. And just I didn't do prosthetics design on that, so it was really cool actually handing that over, and but also being part of the integration of the makeup into the prosthetics with Arian. So yeah, that was actually I felt a really beautiful execution of a transition during that film.
Is Kung Fury still one of your favorite projects that you've ever
Oh,
worked on?
Kung Fury, you've read the list. Well, as you're probably well aware, it's not ever got released. So yes, it was an amazing project to work on, though. The characters. What have you seen of that?
I hear along the grapevine of David Hasselhoff's reaction to the style of his character.
Ah, yes, I may have said that in an interview. Yeah, that was hilarious. So I took David right back to his look that you would probably not remember the show, but he it was, I guess it was in the 80s, the Knight Rider
Yeah.
character. He would have been, you know, in his sort of 20s, I guess, back then. And I had to take him back to look like that. And yeah, the transformation was brilliant. Like he didn't really look in the mirror until I finished, and there was just like tears rolling down his face, and it was really actually quite a moment that we shared there together. But yeah, that was a really cool film to work on, and the amount of character development we did in that film was insane. And David, the director, was so lovely, and it was such a shame it's never actually got to be released yet. But there's still hope. I hear there's still hope.
I'm definitely hopeful.
It's a really cool film,
Yeah.
so it would be great. I mean, we had Michael Fassbender, we had Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like it was an incredible cast. But yeah, it's like steroids. Really, that film is just like nothing like you've ever seen before.
How was it working with Arnold?
And it was great. It was really lovely working with him. I mean, he was in his element playing the president of the United States, smoking his cigar there. But no, he was great to work with. I've been very blessed. I've never really found it very challenging working with some of the A-listers that are out in a lot of the films I've done. I've always enjoyed their company, and it's always been a pleasure to work with people.
Yeah. And in that same interview, you also mentioned that one of the hardest challenges that you faced was from a film with Daniel Radcliffe, Guns Akimbo. Was
Hmm.
that film, when you think about the toughest challenges that you've had in your career, does that film still stick out to you?
That might have been in reference to, I think, just having to build things in the middle of nowhere,
Mhm.
maybe. I can't remember what that was in reference to, but there was, yeah, I did a character in that film, the bad guy in that film, and he had a full head of tattoos. And it was, I can't really remember why it was a last minute design and build, but I just remember staying up all night, literally hand drawing the tattoos that were all covered all over him, and literally making them with a photocopier machine and transfer water slide paper, and managed to pull it off. But yeah, that was quite a crazy project to work on, and I can't even remember why it was left so late in the piece. But things must have changed from the original direction.
What were some other challenges that you faced on projects like Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power? Because that's a big project with a lot of
That,
fantastical
yeah,
elements.
that was a big project, and I guess that was probably one of the bigger challenges doing that down in New Zealand. And it was a big undertaking, and we needed a huge amount of crew. And excuse me, the I mean, the crew here is amazing, but the scale of a project like that, we don't really have enough crew of that skill, especially in the hair, like all the wigs and the beards and all that wig application in a big crowd room sense. So that I brought down some people, some colleagues from the UK to sort of set that up initially, which was awesome. This was in the background department. We basically had all of our key crew, that all our skilled crew, New Zealand crew, in the in the main team. So when it came to trying to service the crowd room, that was where we were struggling the most. But it turned out great. We brought down some people from the UK, and they ended up, helping setting it up and training some locals. And yeah, I think we pulled it off in the end. But came up with some crazy designs for that show, and kind of went out a little bit on a different tangent to the films. But yeah, that was a lot of fun, that project. But it was the biggest. It was the scale of it that was the hardest thing, I think. The amount of beards and the amount of hair work that we had to do. We had some great wig makers as well. They came down from London, wig makers that I've worked with for a long time. They came and helped us as well. So yeah, we certainly were. The beauty of it was we had the money to be able to throw at that.
You started in theater production. Was there something that you took from 8 years of theater production to your first project in Hercules?
Yeah, well, I guess my all my beginnings was in the UK, and so when I first came down to New Zealand, there wasn't an awful lot of people. There was a couple of people doing wigs, and at that time that had had some theatre experience themselves. But really in New Zealand there wasn't any training ground or any theatre companies that had wig or hair departments in that time. And so I guess that's what I brought with me here, was initially was all the wig work, that experience that I'd got from the UK. And because, of course, New Zealand, sorry, Hercules and Xena, which were the first shows I worked on, were in themselves quite theatrical. I slotted quite slotted in well there, and then that's where I first started working with Weta as well, and that's when I first started getting into prosthetics.
And you were mentored by Marjorie Hemlin.
Mm.
If you were the mentor to Jane O'Kane in that time period, what's some of the advice that you would tell her?
Um, that's a hard question. I guess it's now what I know now, but versus, yeah, what I should have known then. I think just having common sense and not letting things overwhelm too much. I mean, at the end of the day, there's always a way. There's always a solution. And I think there's a lot of pressure that comes at us in the film industry, which is always kind of amusing. At the end of the day, we're just making films. not saving lives. And I think it's best to just keep a level head and keep a calm energy around us, and just do our best, really. And I think we have to look at it sometimes a little bit more openly and less stressed.
With as many incredible projects that you've been a part of and that you've worked on, do you ever think about worlds or types of characters or designs that you haven't done yet that you would like to do?
Yes, occasionally. Yeah, there was a time where I was really, I guess it was during Ghost in the Shell, and around that time I was exploring a lot of. You might remember the geishas that we did in Ghost of the Shell. They had quite a structured rubber sort of hair look to them, and that was something that I'd worked Richard Taylor and his team, and the incredible skilled people at Weta. That was fun to work on that, because it was something I'd always wanted to explore, was kind of like sculpted hair. Um, and integrated elements. So that sort of sci-fi genre of Ghost in the Shell was kind of like ticking that box for me. But yeah, that had been something I'd been wanting to explore before I got onto that project. So there's certainly been things along the way, and I'm sure if I put my brain into gear, I could probably think of things now. But I do think there's always something. There's always something new that you can find. I never really want to think that everything's exhausted. There's always a new tune.
There's always a new tune. Thank you
Yeah,
so much for giving us this time.
it's a
I
pleasure.
really appreciate this time that you've given us. Yeah, just thank you for joining us on Chatterbox.
That's been a pleasure. Thank you, Daniel. Nice
Thank
to
you
meet
so
you.
much.